Hello everyone, I am on lesson 3.6, page 105 in your functions and data book, and the example problems I'm going to go over are number 6, 18, and 20. So this lesson is kind of a continuation of lesson 3.5. We're still factoring quadratics, putting them into that factored form with the parentheses. Except now we're factoring quadratics that have a coefficient here in front of this x squared term. So it's kind of adding one extra step. But if you do the grouping method, which I showed in the first problem in the 3.5 video, it is exactly the same. So starting off with number 6, it wants us to factor this quadratic. So we're going to start off by figuring out two numbers that multiply to 5 times 1. So two numbers that multiply to 5 and add up to positive 6. So you can probably do that in your head. Factors of 5 are 1 and 5, and 1 plus 5 is 6. So we have to do a method called grouping here. Because this coefficient here is 5, it's not going to work if we do x plus 1, x plus 5 here. Because then you'll see when we multiply our two x's together, we'll just get an x squared and we're not going to get a 5x squared. So that's not how you do these ones with the coefficient in front of the x squared term. So what we have to do is a grouping method. So we're going to change this positive 6x into a plus 1x and plus 5x. So we're rewriting our problem just like this. It's the same thing as this, except we split our 6x into two parts. And now we can do what's called the grouping method. And it actually doesn't matter if you put the 5 here, the 5x here, and the x here, or flipped them, you're still going to get the same answer. So we go to our first parenthesis and we say, what can I pull out of both of these terms? Now I'm going to pull out an x, and we're left with 5x plus 1. Here, what can I pull out of these terms? There's not a common factor between these, so I'm just going to pull out a 1. And you see if you distribute the 1, you'll just get the exact same thing. Now you pull out the parentheses, 5x plus 1, and you're left with x plus 1. And this will be your answer in factored form. But if you want to check to make sure that this is equivalent to what you started with, you can always FOIL. So 5x times x will give you 5x squared. 5x times 1 will give you 5x. 1 times x will give you x. 1 times 1 will give you 1. Add these together, you get 5x squared plus 6x plus 1. And yes, that matches up. So this quadratic in factored form is just this. Okay, number 18, we're going to find the zeros. So we'll do the exact same steps we did here, except once we get to this part, we're going to have to say what are our zeros, or our roots. So starting here, I need to find a number that multiplies to 8 times 5. So it has to multiply to 40 and add up to negative 22. So two numbers that multiply to 40 and add to negative 22. Let's see, you could do 1 and 40, you could do 5 and 8, but I'm thinking 2 and 20, but let's do negative 2 and negative 20, because those added together will give us a negative 22. But when you multiply them, you'll still get a positive 40. So these are the two factors that we are going to, oops, sorry, this is a 22x. I wrote that down wrong. This is what it should be in the book. So these are the two numbers that we're going to split our 22x into. So our next line is going to be g of x equals 5x squared minus 2x minus 20x plus 8. Whoops. Okay, and then we can group. So this is a part that people mess up a lot here too. This is a negative 20, but when you're grouping, you want the plus to kind of be outside. Just don't mix up this negative. Keep the negative 20 with the 20 and have it be plus negative 20x. All right, so here 5x squared minus 2x, all we can pull out in common is an x. We get 5x minus 2. And here we have negative 20x plus 8. Greatest common factor between 20 and 8 is going to be 4, I believe. And let's pull out a negative 4 because we want both of these things in the parentheses to be the same. And if I pull out a negative 4 instead of a positive 4, then that'll give us a negative 2. So 20 give us 5x minus 2. Good, so this is the final step that we want to happen, is we want both of these parentheses to have the same thing in it so that we can factor that out. Have 5x minus 2, and we're left with x minus 4. And to check our work, we can FOIL this to see if we get the same thing. 5x squared minus 20x minus 2x plus 8. 5x squared minus 22x plus 8. Good. So it's the same thing. So this is our factored form, but they want us to tell them what are the zeros. So here we have to figure out what we plug in for x in each case to make the whole parentheses 0. So this one is easy. We can see if x was 4, this would be 0. So 4 is one of them. This one's a little more tricky. It'll actually be 2/5 because if you multiply 5 over 1 by 2/5, it's going to give you 10 over 5 or 2. So you want to multiply this by something that'll make it 2 because 2 minus 2 is 0. So this one would be 2/5. And these are your zeros. So this is your answer. Oop. Okay, this one, we follow the previous steps and we're solving for this equation. So to solve for an equation, I always recommend putting 0 on one side and all the other numbers on the other. So to do that, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides, and we get 2x squared minus 7x minus 4 equals 0. And now we have to factor this. So we need, let's see, negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. We need two numbers that multiply to negative 8 and add to negative 7. I'm going to say negative 8 and positive 1. 2x squared minus 8x plus 1x minus 4 equals 0. And we're going to do our grouping method. I'm going to pull out a common factor of 2x. Here, the greatest common factor I can pull out is just a 1. And I have x minus 4, they're both the same, so perfect. And I'm left with a 2x plus 1. And all this equals 0. So here we can see that the zeros, or the roots, are going to be the solution to our equation. So all we need to do is find the zeros the same way we did up here. So we have one of our zeros is definitely going to be a 4. And our other one, what do we plug in for x to make this 0? Well, it would be 1/2, because 1/2 times, oh sorry, it would be -1/2, because -1/2 times 2 is -1 plus 1 is 0. And so when it tells you to solve, these are your two solutions. So you would say that as x equals 4 or x equals -1/2. All right, there you go. Good luck.